And at just about 5 minutes after 7 now to one of the most closely watched special elections in the country. Two candidates are going to face off to fill Marjorie Taylor Greene's former seat representing Georgia's 14th congressional district.
And Brooks, this is a crucial race.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when you talk about the balance of power on Capitol Hill, the Republican Clay Fuller, who had President Trump's support, and the Democrat Shawn Harris are going to move on to the runoff election in April. Atlanta News First, Niamani Watson is in studio with us right now. There were a lot of candidates who wanted this seat, and I guess that split the vote a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. 17 candidates in yesterday's special election, 12 of them Republicans, which, as you mentioned, made it hard for just one candidate to receive that 50% threshold to be declared a winner, leading to a runoff. Now, unofficial results show Democrat Shawn Harris got 37% of the vote. Republican Clay Fuller, who was endorsed by President Donald Trump, received nearly 35% in Tuesday's special election. Fuller, a district attorney, leaned heavily on that endorsement from Trump and his tough on crime record. Harris, who is a cattle farmer and retired brigadier general, was able to get a lot of support from not just Democrats, but independents and even some Republicans. Here's what both candidates had to say last night ahead of the runoff election.
Finally, we can break through as a coalition of Democrats, independents, and Republicans. Tonight, you would imagine everybody was here as Democrats. No, it's also Republicans here because they want change.
I think you see with the results tonight, the voters support what President Trump is doing and endorsing our campaign. And I think the Republican Party is going to unite around us because they know that the Democrat is too dangerous. We can't have a Democrat representing Georgia 14.
The runoff in April is only to serve the remainder of Marjorie Taylor Greene's term. Voters in that district will return to the polls again in May for the midterm primary and again in November for the general election. Gravir, Brooks.
All right, Niamani, thank you. The election in the 14th congressional district was one of 4 held across the state. And just like the race in the 14th, these elections are headed to a runoff. Republican Lanny Thomas and the Democrat John Bentley Zivlak are left on the ballot in State Senate District 53. The winner will represent people living in Chattooga, Floyd, Walker, Catoosa, and Dade counties. Democrat Vanola Mason almost claimed victory in State House District 94, which stretches across Gwinnett and DeKalb counties. Instead, she's going to be in a runoff against Kelly Kotz. And Democrat Sheila Clark Nelson and Republican Thomas McAdams will face off in a runoff for State House District 130 to represent voters living in parts of Richmond County. Of course, we are digging deeper into the results from last night's election with political experts during On the Record. You can watch Sunday morning at 11 on Atlanta News First and also streaming on ANF+.